Good evening, everyone. And you're listening to, is it playing? Okay. Hi, Marvin. I believe we will be starting the show in about 2 to 3 minutes. So bear with me. Hmm. That's right. Get it right. Queen Jackie. It's Bama after hours. Hello, YouTubers. Let's see. Wow. Hi, Crush. How are you? So, while I'm waiting for them to work out the logistics, I got a question. What did y'all think about the Bill Cosby verdict? Yeah, it has been a wild crush. Uh, we have to have a play date. You're gonna have to sit in for a few.
I got people back there. You can do a Rachel Maddow. I have faith in you. You got the little shiny thing.
Got the little flower.
Oh, we're doing instrumental right now.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I thought I was. Say something.
Hello, hello, hello. Testing. Okay. We're good.
I want to start the. Okay, we're going to have you in 5, 4. Oh, where'd it go? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're on.
All right. Good evening, everyone. You're listening to the Intimacy Chronicles. I am your host, Queen Jackie. At the moment, I got my partner to the left, but I think he's just temporary. But you want to say hello to the folks?
Good evening.
And that would be Mr. Sensational. So I don't think he'll be with me tonight for long. And the Quiet Storm, he usually comes about 7:30. And I think Dr. Love should be on his way. But I had a couple of things I wanted to talk about tonight. And one of them, before I get to the Bill Cosby thing, I am going to read your comment, Crush.
I'll be back at 8.
Okay. Yeah, because we got to get into that. Before we really dive into the Bill Cosby trial, I want to ask, because as a kid, we say we need to talk to our children about the birds and the bees. Well, I never had the birds and the bees talk. And I have a 9-year-old granddaughter who just had the talk with her mom. And I asked her, what did she think about the birds and the bees talk? And she felt like I didn't think it made sense. I mean, you hear birds and the bees, and your mind as a kid is like, wait a minute, would a bird and bee connect with one another? She said the talk didn't make any sense to her. And I felt like, one, I didn't have the talk, but to say you got to have the talk about the birds and the bees, I really wonder how many adults know what that story consists of. Because as I mentioned, I didn't have the talk. And I was just curious because I never thought it made sense. Oh, you got to talk to them about the birds and the bees. What about the birds and the bees? Well, after doing my own research, I think I realized what the talk was about. And so today, I had the opportunity to really break it down to her, because what she mentioned to me was her mom told her that the bird was sitting on the bench and the bee flew up beside the bird and they got married and had babies. That was the extent of the discussion. So obviously, there's a lot of in between that was missing. I think that living in the society that we live in, and kids are exposed to far more than what we were ever exposed to, especially when you start thinking about the internet, them having access to YouTube. They could probably access porn sites, because I think, speaking from experience, all you have to put is that you are over 18. You can throw in any date of birth and voila, the world of porn has opened up to you. So there are not, I think there are a lot of sites that they have access to. So if we're not talking to these babies about sex, we're really doing them a disservice. So what I found out, actually, let me ask my group. And I'm not going to call y'all names, but for those of you listening, tell me your take on the birds and the bees. I'm really curious, because in my mind, I said, birds and the bees, why would they call it that? Because even in school, I think they vaguely touched on it, but I don't remember going into detail. I knew I learned the parts of the reproduction system, but to actually have the talk, no, I didn't have that. So here's what I found out because I was just so freaking curious, man. I just was like, what the fuck? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And when my granddaughter said it didn't make sense, I felt the need to investigate further. So the breakdown of the birds and the bees is they use the bee, which after I read it really made sense. So bees make a deposit into a flower. Um, and that analogy is supposed to represent the male's reproduction system. So I get it because the bees are fertilizing a flower with their honey. Okay, so the bird represent um, the woman's reproduction system because they lay eggs, and I guess the analogy is although a bee wouldn't fertilize a bird's eggs, I mean, I think they could have came up with a little something better. But anyway, birds lay eggs, and I guess what they were trying to communicate to children was that once the bird eggs get fertilized, um, then she's able to give birth. You know, her eggs will hatch upon maturity. But I think that this is not the message that's being communicated to children because I think a lot of the parents out here do not fully understand the story of the birds and the bees. Um, and I think that it's a shame. I know for my generation, I can speak for us. We didn't have the talk. I remember when I first got my period, and what was told to me was, first of all, I thought I was dying. You know, I come home, was like 9 years old. Came home, you know, had these underwear with the women know. I mean, I had blood in my underwear. I thought I was about to die. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting ready to die because I had no idea why I had it. You know, hey Margot, hi Eric, hey sweetie. And so what I said to my mom when I came out the bathroom, I showed her my underwear and I said, I'm dying. Well, she looked and she said, oh my God. So in my mind, she confirmed that I was dying because all she kept saying was, oh my God. And I'm like, this shit is really bad because she keeps saying, oh my God, like I'm about to fucking die. You know, so, and I remember getting kind of teary eyed because I said, damn, I really am about to die. So the extent of that was, here's what she said. I got to go to the store and get you some feminine products. Uh, and oh, yeah, by the way, you can no longer play with boys. And I was a tomboy. And I'm like, say what? You know, she said you can no longer play with boys. So my question was, what in my underwear tells you that I can no longer play with boys? Now, go with me on this. I mean, I'm 9 years old, and I'm being told because of the content of my underwear that I can no longer play with boys, and I love playing with boys. So, I mean, it's the craziest thing. So I'm asking her questions, and she was getting so damn annoyed, you know, because of the questions. And she just still had the look of devastation on her face because, you know, I guess in her mind, her baby um, is growing up, and she wasn't prepared for it. So for those of, for people in my generation, and when you first got your period, you had those super size maxi pad that stuck out the front of your underwear and damn near the back too. So y'all know what I'm talking about. I mean, technology has come a long way now, but I'm just saying, I remember sticking that goddamn thing in my drawers and like, damn, this is probably what a dick feels like, So I just think, I'm going to read your comment, Eric. So Eric says most of us learned about the bird and the bees in the streets. And you're right. And I think a lot of us learned probably not the right things, we weren't armed with knowledge. And I'm going to be very honest. Even when I got pregnant, I was 22 years old when I got pregnant. I still didn't know a lot. I didn't even know how to use a tampon at that age. You know, interestingly enough, my son's aunt showed me how to use tampons. I mean, when I say it was a lot of stuff I didn't know, it was. I mean, nobody was talking about it then. So I said, when I have a child, right, Eric. I mean, it's crazy because none of us knew a lot. We knew how to bump and grind. We definitely knew how to do that. Um, and at a young age, I like porn. Um, so that's a different story. But yeah, I mean, it was crazy. And I remember my brother when he, got older. My dad said to him, "Hi, Demetrius, how you doing?" My dad said, "Well, you got to be careful out there, son." That was it. No explanation, nothing. Just got to be careful out there. Make sure you don't get none of these little girls pregnant. But he didn't know anything. So, I mean, you're telling him don't get any of these little girls pregnant. Well, he probably didn't have a clue on how to get someone pregnant. Um, a lot of things I learned later in life. So I said when I had a child of my own, I'm not going to send him out crippled, And what I mean by that, there was like nothing that I wouldn't discuss with my son. And the same way with my granddaughter. I have an open door policy. Let's get this shit out on the table. Whatever questions you have to ask me, please ask me because that's what I'm here for. And I do not want her to have a lack of knowledge like I had. So that was like the promise I made to myself. If I have a child, they're gonna know everything that I know when it comes to sex and birth control and things of that nature. Because I think the biggest mistake we can make as parents is sending our kids out there with little to no knowledge and ways on how to protect themselves. Perhaps if a lot of children were educated, STDs would be at a minimum. Pregnancy would be at a minimum. But we're not talking, and sometimes the conversations that we're not having can be so detrimental, and it begins to be a continuous cycle of, excuse me, of them making mistakes because they don't know. And if they come, I'm not going to say everybody, but some parents, if your child come to you wanting to talk about certain things, because it makes you so uncomfortable, you're not going to be willing to have that discussion. And I think that's really unfair. I mean, we live in a day of modern technology. We have all this information at our fingertips. Get out your own fucking head and start having these discussions with these babies because we're crippling them, and not just about sex, but finances. We have to prepare our children when we send them out into the world. It's crazy, It's like I know that my parents, their parents didn't talk to them. So that carries over. And I just, for me, was like, oh no, hell no, I'm breaking this cycle right now. And I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I had the conversation with my son. Even now, my son is 30 years old. There's nothing that we can't discuss. And I love it. My granddaughter is 9. There is nothing that she couldn't ask me that I wouldn't answer truthfully for her. And her parents know that. It's like, nah, man, I can't just not, I can't withhold information. Um, so, yeah, that's my take on that. Hey, Gary, thanks for joining. So that was my, little. It kind of was in my mind, to discuss the birds and the bees because we hear that terminology so often, but I just wonder how many of us know the actual birds and the bees story. How many of us know why they even call it that? I still think it's kind of, when you think of the story, it's kind of never in the history of life have I known, a bird and a bee to mate. So I'm not sure why they use that title. Uh,
Maybe you are the queen.
can you get through?
Maybe yeah. I'm trying to breeze through here.
So yeah, that was my that was my take. I hope I mean, I just want to give y'all something to think about, when y'all having these discussions with these babies, whether it be your own grandkids, nieces, nephews. Um, like I said, I have an open door policy with my son, my granddaughter, my nieces and nephews. I mean, hell, I always feel like I'm not closeted. I'm just an open book. So I don't have anything to hide. If somebody asks me a question, I don't have a problem with answering. You might not always like my answer, but it's going to be an honest answer. Let me see who I got in here. Hi, Sherelle. Thanks for joining me. Um, so, yeah, I'm going to let you get yourself situated, but we were talking about the birds and the bees before we move on to Mr. Cosby, because I've been dying to get into this Bill Cosby thing. But see, when people come in late, they got to get situated and shit of that magnitude. But it's no shade,
No shade. No. To each his own.
Oh, I did, Demetrius. I'm so glad. And Demetrius, you know exactly what I'm talking about because I'm pretty sure you didn't have the talk either, because of how we grew up. Hey, Karma. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's like it just the whole story kind of was kind of whack, and you said you didn't have the talk either.
I ain't had to talk.
Yeah, so
I ain't had to talk, and when you don't have to talk,
you are like flying blind.
And you hear about birds and bees, and make you wonder: do birds and bees have sex?
And that was my point. Y'all call it the birds or history. They say the birds and the bees. Hi, Leroy. Thanks for joining. But the birds and the bees, I've never known a bird and bee to conceive.
Me neither.
So I'm like, let me just do my own research and maybe I can figure out the logic behind saying, it's time to have the discussion about the birds and the bees. I can see it from a standpoint of reproduction where the bee makes a deposit, the bird lays an egg once that egg is fertilized. But to me, I felt like the way it was presented was like, wait a minute. Now, have the birds and the bees got together to do the freaky sneaky?
Well, it kind of make you wonder, like, hey, I know that female bird was like, listen, you can fuck me, but you better not sting me, motherfucker. Don't sting me with that stinger.
But and that's the thing. I mean, you're gonna get stung. that bee needs to make a deposit. I'm just saying.
You know what? You know, maybe it could have been the other way around. Maybe it was a female bee and a female and a male bird, and the male bird was like, "Hey, you bee, can I get some of that honey?"
Well, I mean, if they're gonna use, I feel like instead of saying the birds and the bees, I don't know, you could have probably came up with something.
They could have, but you talking about something that has been going around since
It's learned behavior.
something.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, they have this the birds and the bees conversation or the saying has been going around for so long.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
Absolutely.
If you are a big fan of Good Times, they have had that saying on one of their shows about the birds and the bees.
Yeah, you hear it so much.
And Good Times was out in like 75. So you mean to tell me y'all were talking about birds and bees
I think at
back
that
in
time,
75?
yeah, think about it.
Nobody
because
decided to change the saying?
I think because it was a level of comfort by saying the birds and the bees. They didn't have to really dive into a sexual topic. They could just use the birds and the bees as kind of like you're tap dancing around the actual story, you know, because like I said, for people in my family like that are around my age, I know that a lot of them didn't actually hear the story, you know, and my 9-year-old granddaughter thought that the shit didn't make any sense. Which made me want to do the research, you know, because the last thing I want is for her to, oh, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't understand. No, I want you to understand. So I felt like.
But then you figure, okay, so let me ask this question, because this is I don't even know if you even asked this question. What is the age that you decide to have the conversation about the birds and the freaking bees?
Hi, Claudia. I'm gonna put it out there in the group, and I, you know, there's no
What's the
right.
age?
I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
What's the age limit for the birds and the bees?
Yeah, what is the appropriate age to have a discussion about the birds and the bees? My granddaughter is 9, and yes, we have had that discussion. My son, I'm trying to think how old my son was when I had the conversation with him. Probably 11. He was 11. I think with kids being exposed to so much, I think 9 isn't a bad age. Hell, 8 is probably not a bad age, and here's why. They have access to the internet. They're on YouTube. Some of these kids have their own YouTube channel. Why wouldn't you arm them with knowledge? Why wouldn't you discuss sex now? Why?
I agree.
Get out
if you want to change the name, don't call it the birds and the bees. Call it the semi-truck and the tunnel.
Now that might be a little strong for a child. So Dr. Love is suggesting instead of calling it the birds and the bees, call it the semi-truck and the tunnel. Now I think that might be a little deep. You know, I really think that might be a little deep for a child.
Listen.
What
child you talking about?
I'm saying a child 9 and younger.
Listen.
I think to say a semi-truck and a tunnel.
They got so much going on right now.
Are you trying to call a woman a tunnel? I mean, that's a little different.
Yes.
That's why I said that might be, you might have to say birds and the bees, but you got to tell them the full story.
Women are the tunnel, and the men are the semi-trucks. And we go in.
Some might be a matchbox.
And we go in and we go.
I'm just saying.
Some
might be a matchbox.
I'm a Mack truck.
Anyway,
I'm a Mac. Hey, don't fucking judge me.
I'm not judging.
I'm just saying. I'm saying.
First of all, we're not even gonna go there because we're not gonna talk about men whose dicks are big in their head and might not be in their pants. We're not doing that. We're just having a simple conversation about birds and the bees.
That
Okay,
ain't me.
I'm just saying.
That
I'm
ain't.
just. We're not talking about that. I really want to make sure that we are doing right by our children and making sure we're educating them.
They damn. Let me
They're
tell you,
exposed
if
to
you
so
if you
much.
if you look at the videos that's going on right now, first of all, if you don't have the parents that's doing parental, they're making it. Put it like this: society puts it out there for you to protect your kids.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that they know that black folks don't read. They don't read certain things on what to do or whatever.
Well, I think
So
that's not
don't you know
so
that
much
if you
now.
don't you know that if you have cable, if you don't want your child to look at something, you can program it.
Mm-hmm.
It's called parental control.
Yeah, parental
or
guidance.
something like that.
Yeah.
So you can already set certain channels on your TV if you that kind of parent that you don't want your children to watch. It's also the same way as the internet. Mm-hmm. If they type in something on the internet, you can automatically stop it. You know what I'm saying? So, but these parents are not doing that. They're not having that kind of control. They feel like they don't want that kind of control. Anytime you see a baby dancing like she's a thought,
like twerking
in a club, that means
and
they are
not
letting
cute.
the children watch whatever they want to watch and do whatever they want to do. And the videos are not making it no better because you damn near are seeing them damn near having sex in the videos.
Mm-hmm. And
while they
yeah. And I'm going to agree with you because, okay, let's say for argument's sake, at home, parental passwords and things are set up on your cable, on the computer. There's always a way for kids to get around it. They're not in your presence 24 hours a day. So isn't it much easier to have a discussion with them?
You ain't never
lied.
know,
so if they see something that's kind of a shock to their system, I will hope that you have a relationship with them to the point where they're open enough to want to come to you about it. I think that let's not hide like, our parents did back in the day, because the sex talk and growing up in the church made it uncomfortable to discuss sex. Let's get this shit out on the table now and educate, because it's important because of everything that they are exposed to. And I just feel like, they're very smart. And, they probably heard something in school that might be above our heads, because
I'm gonna tell you. Let me tell you this funny story. I used to work in the school system, and there were certain. I was the administrator for student development. That's the professional name that they gave it. Basically, I was the administrator for in-school suspension.
Okay.
So there were times that I would look at certain things on my laptop, whether it's music or different things like that. So I would say, there are certain sites that the school will lock out.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you have students that will say to you, "Oh, I know how to get past that,"
exactly,
and would type in it could be www.mrproxy.com, and next thing you know, you can access YouTube and different things like that, and they tell you, well, as long as you type this in, it'll go past. I'm saying to myself, like, anything else, they'll figure out, how to break the code. You know what I'm saying?
Because they're very, kids are smart. Let me read some of these comments. Let me see. Hey, brother-in-law. So Tony says, hey, Boop, I think it's a little deep as well. Yeah, definitely. I agree. Amen. They really are exposed to too much. And it's sad. Let me see. Hi, T. Hey, Bridget. I think that, yes, they are exposed to a lot, but we have a responsibility as parents. You know, it's not the responsibility of the street to educate them. It's ours. You know, so you grew up in a time where your parents' sex talk was taboo and you didn't have the conversation. Break the cycle. You know, when you have your own kids, have an open discussion about the birds and the bees. But when you have that discussion, know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just say the birds and the bees. The bird was sitting on the bench. Are you stroking something? Or maybe that was my mind. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, it did look like that, right?
yes.
You know, you got a cat at home.
So he thought he was making something purr.
Yeah, yeah.
So
You so you should stroke the pussy.
So, you know, before we move on, I want to give you the opportunity to discuss the birds and the bees. What do you know about the birds and the bees?
I'm still learning.
Hot
Listen,
damn.
you got 3 children. Don't do
know.
it.
I overheard a little bit. You're absolutely right. Never underestimate their intelligence.
Yeah.
Because I kind of, and sometimes when I talk to my wife, I'm like, I remember how I was when I was that age.
Mm-hmm.
Last conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, when Nate was talking about his childhood, it kind of reminded me, I could relate because as a kid, I never went through that stage where I didn't like girls.
Okay.
You know, I didn't went. I'm talking about kindergarten. I was like kind of interested in
Yeah.
girls. You know,
Yeah.
and I never got to a point where it was like, ew, girls, or you know, like some people go through the stages. So I was precocious, and I assume the same thing with my kids too. Because
Yeah.
I remember when my daughter was about 10 years old, and she was getting into dancing. She may be 11, and I asked her. And I said, yeah, that new dance teacher that y'all got, is he? She go, gay? Right? And I say,
Wow.
I said, no, that's not my question.
Cannon shot.
Yeah. And I remember having us, and if you can entertain me for like 30 seconds, my oldest daughter, I'm gonna tell you a story. She was about 9 years old, and we were sitting in the car, and I was being a silly dad as usual, right? So I started singing. I'm so pretty, I'm so pretty, I'm so witty, happy, and gay, right? Singing the song, right? She at 9 years old go, oop. So I turned down the radio. I was like, oop what? She was like, I said, what does gay mean, honey?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to explain. I said, well, tell me if it's an issue or anything like that. If you're wrong, I'll I'm trying to. My first daughter, my first child. I'm trying to be responsible, and try to keep it real. I call myself keeping it real. I call myself keeping it real, right? So she goes, well, Daddy, it's like when a guy likes another guy, and I said, correct. That's a form of being gay. I said, well, also it's when a woman likes a woman as well. She said, oh no, Daddy, that's a les.
And that's what I'm saying.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So I was like, so I sat there and literally I didn't know what to laugh. So I sat there quiet, looking straight ahead, right? And I saw her out of my corner of my eye. She looked at the window and goes, awkward, right? And, you know what I'm saying? But my point is the fact that she was already ahead of the curve, and I'm thinking I'm schooling her, and she said, "Oh no, Daddy, that's a les." So
and that's why we
kids,
gotta talk to them
kids
because they know a lot.
Kids are so smart, and I haven't had that conversation with my daughter. You know what I'm saying. But I'm gonna tell you how smart she is. I picked her up and I said, "Well, we're gonna go out to eat." And I said, "But give me a minute, let me pull over," because I already told her we was, I think we was going to Friendlies, and she was like, but while I'm looking it up, she was like, "Oh, Daddy, you ain't gotta look it up. You ain't gotta use Google. I know how to get there." What? You ain't gotta use Google. I can tell you how to get there. Now she was only 9. 9.
Familiar neighborhood or no?
Huh?
She was in a familiar place or no?
She knew how to get there from her mother's house.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to myself, but the part about getting there is one thing. The fact of I said, okay, well let me look for her to know what I was getting ready to do. So you ain't gotta use Google.
Yeah.
I can show you how to get there. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I actually even know I was getting ready to even go to. I wasn't going to Google. I was going to Maps, but still,
Still same thing.
it's still the same thing.
Yeah,
You know
but
what I'm saying?
that's
They
why I
smart,
say
man. I'm
you
telling
have to,
you.
you gotta educate
They
them
are
because
smart.
we're not doing them. We're doing them a disservice by not. And I'm gonna go back to your story. When I was coming up, a boy that displayed certain tendencies, they would say he's a sissy or a punk.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't know the word faggy until I was probably about 18. Now, my granddaughter, I remember at 3, she said, at my aunt house, the boy was dancing like a faggy. And I was like, a faggy? What tell me what that is to you? The fact that she knew that word at 3 years old, we didn't refer to them, and it's just a generational change, where they're so open. So, what I wanted, I mean, at 3 years old, I couldn't get but so deep because she was just 3, but it still blew my mind that she knew that word because we didn't refer to people that way. And now to have that discussion with her, um, I feel like people have a right to love who they love. So, but since we were talking about the birds and the bees, I wanted to know what else she knew
Yeah.
so that we can have a discussion. I think that's kind of like one of the good things I like that I have to pick her up so that I can see where she is, and I can kind of like fill in the gap of what she knows. Now I'm gonna read Tanya's comment. Tanya says, my granddaughter comes home from school telling us who's gay. Wait a minute. I ain't got my glasses. Okay. Who's gay? Her words, not mine. And I do talk to her so she can have correct info and not what other kids are telling her. So I do agree you have to talk to them. Her granddaughter is 11. So Eric says, my son says, I'm not even messing with him. Eric says, my son says, him downstairs.
Him downstairs.
But yeah, I mean, it's like there's so many in school. They hear so many different things, and I think the worst thing we could allow is for them to think it's okay to pick with somebody because of sexual orientation or call names. Because people have a right to love who they love, but us as parents have to educate.
And that's the thing. You're absolutely right about the education because you know that 3-year-old they don't know that it's a
That is
derogatory
exactly,
term.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and just coming up when growing up, we I used to use the term loosely, because that's what I heard. I never heard it in my home. I
Okay.
heard it outside in the streets, and
Mhm.
that was the norm to me.
Right.
We had how like everybody got nicknames. We had 3 Dereks: Skinny Derek, Fat Derek, and Faggy Derek. You know what I
Okay.
mean? But that's what everybody. You talk about the '70s, '80s,
It's right.
a little bit different
Exactly.
climate. So,
Exactly.
but now it's like it's almost like when you do your best until you know better,
Mhm.
and once you know better, you change. Yeah, it was a lot of things we did or that wasn't politically correct,
Right.
that won't be politically correct now, and it's like with that, once you hear them, you have to. It's called parental guidance,
Right.
and you explain to them and say, "Hey, that's not a good term to use.
Mhm.
That's not a right way." From the word retarded to midgets
Mhm.
to how you describe someone who's gay or lesbian.
Mhm.
You once you hear it, you have to give
Yeah.
educate them because they're going to do the same thing until they find a better way.
Right. You have the power to
Mm-hmm.
break the chain.
I mean, when we was coming up, I don't think that we, I don't think that we would use. the term faggot. I'm trying to remember if we even would say faggot or whatever.
And we went from
Um,
faggy to faggot too. I went out because I'm a little
Fag.
older than you. So as a kid,
You
it was
know.
faggy, and then
Yeah,
it was
See,
that,
we
there we
didn't
go.
do that.
There we
You
go.
know,
There we go. We would use faggot.
Yeah,
You know
we
what I'm
didn't.
saying?
It would
And then it
be
was punk.
sissy or punk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm trying to think of what else. I'm telling you, I didn't learn faggy until I was older.
Right, or
See, I
you
grew
know,
up in Northeast Baltimore.
you know,
you grew up in a affluent area.
little sweet,
A
you
little
know,
sweet,
a
yeah.
little sweet
You
or
might have
whatever.
said that
And
too.
then
My
and
father
then
used to
you would,
do this.
this part right. But then you had, you know how your friends would play certain games with you. So they'll say, I'll play with you. You probably know this game, dude, but I don't. You probably don't. So they'll say, I'll say, hey, Rich, hold your hand up. Or you already
I
know that
remember
game.
that.
You
I'm
already
not
know
that
that.
old. I
So they
remember
tell you
that.
hold your hand up, and when I shoot,
Mm-hmm.
you let your hand die, and then you'll get them dummies.
Mm-hmm.
Pow.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Why does that
What-
mean gay?
Yeah.
I know, right? But I mean, but that's what it was, related to.
Right.
Eric said sugar britches. And I never heard that one.
Yeah. Now, you see that there's just so many terms now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at that gay ass motherfucker.
Bati
Fag.
all that stuff.
Look at that
Yeah,
sugar tank.
That's your native language.
Sugar tank. Look at the sugar fall from his drawers. Some shit
But
like
I mean,
that.
it just
Put it
goes
in.
back to what you said, Rich.
Him
when
downstairs.
you know better, you do better.
And downstairs.
Yeah.
It was the milk and cookies.
So, we're not bashing or anything. We're just
No, we're
talking
not.
about
We're not.
behavior. You teach better so that your kids don't grow up saying the same thing, because it's hurtful.
Yeah, and they won't. The thing about it is, even if it's a racial term,
Right.
they won't get away with it nowadays because
Mm-mm.
people with social media and stuff, people will make a big deal out of it.
Oh my God, yes.
And then your kid will say something out there or post something or whatever, and then they're questioning your parenting skills. So it's a lot different. And that's the thing about it is you have to stay in front of it so that they know, because you don't want to be a situation where they have no clue and they make that mistake.
Right, yeah.
And then they have to pay the sometimes you don't get a second chance.
I agree.
Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. There were certain things that when we saw coming up, we didn't really know because nobody really told us. So, for a while, I actually thought that people like Morris Day, Prince, Milli Vanilli, yeah, those ones who dressed a certain way, that they was gay, or they were sweet, or they went the other way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you really didn't know Rick James, you would thought Rick James had this one picture where he's standing on a street with his guitar with these tight pants on. Well, you would think that he, you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like, we was naive. You know what I'm saying? It's just that once again, we was blinded talking about the birds and the bees. And I asked again, what do a bird and a bee got to do with sex?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It didn't make sense. But when I read, I gotta research this thing. Why I wanted to know why the hell was it called the birds and the bees?
Yeah. We're gonna have an answer by next week, though.
Huh?
Yeah, that's a good point.
We're gonna have an answer by
I
next
told
week.
you were late,
I
so
need
you
to know.
didn't get to hear the answer.
Well, I mean,
But-
I'm thinking, wasn't it a song, or did the song come first, or did the term come first?
I think the term came first.
Because let me tell you about the birds and the bees, the flower and the tree,
And
the moon
yeah,
and the stars. And
right.
the
I
things called
remember
love.
that song. Yeah,
So
I do
maybe
remember
they
that.
They said, well, maybe they use that to say, I'm going to tell you about the birds and the bees, but and this
Right.
thing called love. But instead of going through the whole line, they just said the birds and the
Right.
bees.
They didn't dive into the story.
Yeah.
They left the in between out. When they say the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees, yeah, the birds, the bees fertilize the flowers.
But you know, the conversation conflict into that
Mm-hmm.
because if you go way back before your era, it wasn't talking
Are you
about the
calling me
birds.
old?
No shade.
Why does he
No
walk
shade
into
at all.
this every time?
No shade at all. No shade at all.
In your era.
I'm just saying, no shade at all. But before your era,
Again.
that they wasn't talking about birds and bees. They was talking about the stork, Mr. Stork. And
Now we wasn't told.
you didn't hear about the stork.
I was familiar with the stork, but we weren't talking anything reproductive.
Let me take you back to the late 90s, early 2000s.
Is that how you gonna put it?
My kids are young, right?
Mm-hmm.
Daddy, where do babies come from? My oldest daughter and her cousin. I said, well, it comes from mommy's belly. No, it don't. It comes from mommy's vagina. I was like, who told you that? They saw it on the Discovery Channel.
So you know what? You
And
know
that's
what?
what I'm
You could have
saying.
been one of them
That's
fathers.
exactly what I'm saying.
No,
It's
but
the knowledge is out there.
Yeah, but I underestimated their intelligence.
Yeah.
You know what? You
I
could have
think
been one of them
as parents, we
fathers
do.
that would have been like, well, if you know why you asked me.
But,
You know what I'm saying?
But I'm saying they already, that was my first instance where I underestimated what
Right.
they already know.
And
I
that was your cue to
Mhm.
kind of further.
Good thing
have
I
the
wasn't
discussion.
lying. I mean, yeah, it came from mommy's belly, but it comes out through it.
Right.
And I recovered, but you know.
Yeah. You didn't foul out.
So
You
now
didn't foul out.
my son's around 10 years old. When I have that talk, I'm be like, all right, buddy, what do you know?
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
And then you can start filling
Ask
in the
me
gaps.
questions, you
Yeah.
know. See, my dad was like, I don't know if you ever met my dad, but he was a straight shooter, and I'm sitting there like, and I asked him, I was like, Dad, why did you have these conversations with me before I was 10, 6 or 7, right? And he said, I noticed from a young age you were very precocious.
Okay.
And you were very mature for your age. I mean, and he was like, some people call it a pussy. So I'm like 8 years old, right? Right.
Well, he
I'm
blunt.
listening. Yeah, that's my dad,
But
right?
yeah.
You know, he was like, if you want me to show you how to put one on, I will. You're talking about condoms and stuff when I got older, you know. So that was the relationship I had with my dad.
Yeah.
Me being the oldest, he was that kind of way.
And I think you have to be. I mean, hell, I showed my son using a vibrator how to put a condom on because I think that you have to be proactive.
Yeah.
You know, he was already, I kept hearing, I was like, what the hell is that goddamn noise?
Mm-hmm.
And it was him trying to, I said, what you in there doing? He was already practicing. But I think some kind of way, I think he was messing up. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Let me show you. So I went, got my vibrator, and he said, what you doing with that? I said, we're not talking about me right now. This is about you.
Yeah, and you have to, but I remember feeling awkward. You know
I bet
what
it was awkward.
You know, and I know my son, sometimes I know my son will be, you know, but you gotta, they have to know. You know? But again, I think that's the biggest thing that we need to make sure is don't underestimate their intelligence.
Right.
We think they know this, but trust me, they probably know a lot more than we think they know. And as a parent, you want them to keep their innocence as much as possible, but you have to recognize and keep it real for yourself.
Now, my father used to take us to the movies every weekend. We never really had a say-so in what we wanted to see. It was going to be some kind of karate movie. Oh, my God. But I love karate. You know, yeah, exactly. And you go in late, and then you can stay and, leave on the part that you came in on. But when we would go see, like, the movies, the black exploitation movies, and I remember, I swear it seemed like every movie that had Fred Williamson in it, there was always a scene of him sucking on some white woman titty. And I used to feel so uncomfortable because I'm there with my dad, and my brothers, and I'm like, on my own, I didn't mind watching porn, but when I'm sitting in the theater with my father, I'm like, oh God, let's just hurry up and get past the scene. And I was saying this to my brother last night. I said, you remember every scene Fred Williamson had was with a white woman, except for I think maybe his earlier movies. But yeah, I was like, let's hurry up and get past this scene. And then I'd be looking at my father like, you knew this was gonna have a sex scene because of Fred Williamson. So, but we couldn't ask no questions. You understand?
This ain't about me. This ain't about you. This about me. I want to see my movie.
So, since we're talking about that back in the day, in the scenes and stuff and different actors, what y'all think about this Bill Cosby verdict?
Shame on him if he. Shame on him because people, and I heard a lot of parallels between. I saw one thing where it says, he's 80 years old. Why put him in jail? But they comparing him to Weinstein or whatever. But I was having this conversation. I said it's a little bit different. This is a situation where this ain't a situation where you say, okay, if you sleep with me, I'm gonna give you this part, and then you renege. Right? This is a situation where you sit up there drinking something. He gives something to you unsuspectingly. You wake up, don't even know what with a dick in your mouth. It's different. That's straight up. It's wrong on many levels. And like I said, I didn't want to believe it, but if he did it, shame on him, and he gets what he deserved. I think he was part of a culture back then that everybody did it.
Everybody did it, right.
Did it. But again, it does not make it right.
It doesn't make it right.
At one point, it was okay to lynch black people. You see what I'm saying? At one point it was a lot. It was okay to do a lot of things. It doesn't make it right.
Right. And my thing is, I hear people, men and women, say, "Why are they coming out now?" Well, if you think back then, did women really have a voice? Because men thought it was their rite of passage to use women as sex objects. That's how they looked at women. So, and because they were able to get away with it for so long, I don't feel sorry for him if he did this. He admitted in a couple of cases that yes, he would have women come to his house. Yes, he would offer them a drink. Yes, he might offer a pill.
He said it in one of his stand-ups.
And that's what I'm saying.
He actually said that in one of his stand-up routines back in the day. And I remember him joking around about it. He was like, give her a Quaalude,
And that's what I'm saying. You joke about that because you were so used to getting away with it. You were a rising star. You knew that because, honestly, Bill Cosby was funny looking and probably the only way that he could probably get.
I think he was a handsome man.
I don't think he was funny looking.
Back in his, I ain't gonna debate.
In his young days.
I ain't trying to debate how.
No. In his younger day, but
But he had money, he had power, he had known he was the first.
Right.
It was him and Sidney Poitier.
Yeah, but you don't hear about.
I'm talking about as far as stars back then. And and he was a crossover star at the very
right.
But the thing about it, when he told that joke, everybody laughed.
Everybody laughed, but they didn't realize there was truth in that joke. And when you can joke about something like that, and at the risk of women being hurt, you had no regard for them. And they said a couple of these incidents took place in his home.
But you know what? It's a joke, right? Some people like I have a good friend that I grew up with as a child, and we still kind of keep in touch. And I called up. I said, "Look, if I ever touched your booty back in elementary school, I'm apologizing right now. Before you take me to." She started laughing, right? Because and I say that to laugh because when you were young. You know what I'm saying? You don't think you thought it was okay.
Exactly.
Touch a girl on the booty and then run and all that stuff.
Yeah.
How many times you play those little stupid games? That was sexual harassment.
It was sexual harassment.
And it
And
would
I
not
think,
float now
yeah,
in elementary school or
women
junior
had to
levels.
take it
Yeah, yeah,
then.
yeah.
And that's the thing. And
And I'm
I'm not
embarrassed to
saying
say.
all these women are telling the truth. I'm not saying that. But what I will say, there have been a lot of women back then that were sexually abused
Yeah,
and they had no voice.
yeah,
You understand? So why not now? Why not come out now?
yeah.
Because they have a voice. Women have more power now. And you don't know the rippling effects that certain behaviors had on them over the years.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Let me. Number one, I gotta disagree, and let me tell you the reason why. Nobody put a gun to these women's heads and told them to come to this man's house. You came to this man's house. The man has asked you to sit down and have a drink. Fine. You claiming that you woke up with just your shirt on, no pants, and your panties. Now, the way that I look at the situation is this. If the situation really happened, she would have reported it to the police, a true woman that would have been adamant to want to see justice. This is 2018. 2018. And you mean to tell me something that didn't happen 40 years ago? Now you're trying to seek justice for it. I don't understand it. I don't understand why they doing it. Why you didn't say nothing when it happened? Why you didn't go to the police when it happened?
Because you're
Why
not
you
a
didn't?
woman. That's why you don't understand.
Why you didn't? Why you didn't? Why you didn't? Uh, uh, but here's the thing. He worked with a bunch of women on his set, and not one of them have ever said that he sexually harassed them.
And
Ain't nobody saying anything. You working with Felicia Rashad, Lisa Bonet, Tempest Bledsoe, Keisha Knight Pulliam was just a child, and Raymond Simone, and the other daughter.
See, but when you bringing up kids, that's a different thing.
It's a different story.
Those are
and
kids.
not just
But
that,
what
these
about
are already.
what about Felicia Rashad?
She's already an established
Because Amari
actress.
kicked his ass.
Exactly. He only went after women that weren't even.
No, I wouldn't say that because you're talking about.
Don't put
Beverly
Janice
John-
Dickinson in it
Beverly
because she was
Johnson one of them?
well.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but my point with that,
Maybe
I
maybe
think
as a type.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna even take it a step further. I think he had a fetish.
I think he was just irresponsible.
I think he,
Okay.
and here's why I said the fetish. He was so used to being able to have any woman he wanted.
It was a game.
It was a game,
Yeah.
that cat and mouse
Yeah.
thing, you know. And when you sexually assault someone, it's about power, you know. And you're saying, why would they wait this long? Again, back then, it was the norm. A woman couldn't go to the police and say, Bill Cosby assaulted me, because who are they going to believe? The cop is a man.
He owned NBC at that time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were paying people to keep quiet. So my point is, you can say, why would they wait? Why wouldn't they wait? They're going to wait for their voice. He admitted to I think the girl who they just found him guilty on, he admitted to her mom that he made a mistake. You know, Bill was irresponsible, as you said.
And the thing about that one, they only got those cases in because it was the statute of limitations didn't run out.
Right,
The other ones from back in the 70s and stuff couldn't.
They can't
only
do
could
anything.
testify, but
Yeah.
the ones that those 3 counts were bad. I mean, when they filed charges, it was like weeks before
Yeah.
the statute of limitations about to run out.
Yeah.
So that's why they picked those 3. That's secretary.
Right,
and
right.
these unknown people.
Yeah, and another thing about that, okay, so you go to the man's room. I think I can kind of go with you a little bit on that. You go to the man's house or his room, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Y'all having drinks. Okay, drinks is one thing. Why would you take a pill from him? But even still, to say that, it still didn't give him the right to take advantage. If they went to his room hoping to he can further my career, and then it didn't go the way they planned because they got sexually assaulted, um, can you still cry foul?
Well,
I guess you can
okay.
because you still don't have the right to sexually assault because they come to your room. And like Eric said, um, Bill was really sloppy. And he was. And it was like a matter of fact. You got to realize back then he was hanging at the Playboy
I
Mansion.
bet you the first time he did it, he was careful. But when you get away from it for so long,
It
you
becomes
be,
addictive.
it becomes you like, okay, this
Yeah,
the norm,
exactly.
and
And
you
he's
become
hanging
so.
with people,
Mm-hmm.
you at the Playboy Mansion all the time, surrounded by women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think Bill tried to play that game. But
But who's to say
Who does? Who
who's
didn't?
to say that that happened?
But who didn't?
Who's
Who
to
didn't
say
hang
that?
out at the Playboy
and
No,
Mansion?
you're
but
right.
I would have went
okay,
to the Playboy
But
Mansion.
can
listen.
you play the same game that Hugh Hefner play?
No,
Exactly.
I'm not trying to trick somebody into having sex
And
with
that's
me.
the
You know.
thing.
Who's to
I think
say?
that's the big difference right there. I think that
Who's to say that he tricked them? Who's to say that they wanted to, just like you just said,
He's
further their career?
he
They
is.
came over. They got a couple of drinks. The conversation led to drinking, and then, I mean,
You know what?
who
You know
it's a
who,
what?
who
trick when you have to slide them a pill. That is a
yeah,
trick.
but
That means
who said?
that is your intent to do harm.
But
You
who says that they took a pill? Why is it that they wasn't intoxicated and probably wanted to seduce the man
He said
to
it.
try to see if
he
they can
said
get
it.
ahead?
He
You
said
can
it.
argue all day, but he
said it.
admitted that.
He said it in his That's what got him. That's what got him convicted because he said what he did. He
Exactly.
gave him the pill, and he that's what because when they was interviewing one of the jurors, he never watched the Cosby Show. He didn't know who he was,
Yeah.
and he said what convicted him is the fact that he said, yeah, I did it. He admitted he
That's
didn't lie.
public record that he admitted to giving them quaaludes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So again, because a woman come to your room and have drinks with you, it doesn't give you the right to sexually assault them.
Yeah, that's because I do question why they didn't come out, but if it's within their right, maybe whatever reason they didn't want to come out, because I'm looking at it from a situation like, all right, I got kids, I got daughters,
And
you
you don't
know,
want them
and
smeared.
yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
whatever reasons, I would like for them to come out. If it does happen to them, come out immediately, but
Right.
if they want to wait and if it's within their rights, so be it.
Yeah.
You
You're
know,
going to
I
support
just
whatever they decide to do, but it has to be
but,
their decision because that is a traumatic experience.
I just thought
You
about
know?
something, and just when you said it, it dawned on me what he was saying too. So you've seen Martin.
Hmm?
You've seen Martin.
Martin.
Okay, Martin. So it was an episode where he said, I think from Scarface, that's okay.
Yeah,
Another
just
Quaylon,
another claim.
she'll love me in the morning. Now,
Yeah.
oh my God,
that's a
I'm
very
so fucking slow.
right. And
Oh,
when you say
shit.
that, it's like think of all of the men in power that were using quaaludes to seduce women or to pretty much have their way with women. I think that because because they're in your room, I'm sorry, it doesn't give you the right to take advantage.
It,
And then you're making, going back to your point, you have, omitted that in your stand up. You made a joke about it. He deserved to have his ass convicted.
But I just think again, I think that was part of the culture that was widely accepted. He wasn't the only person doing it.
Of course he wasn't.
and that's
But
what,
he
and
got
that's,
caught with his pants down.
and that's the thing about it is he wasn't the only person doing it, but he's the only person convicted. Okay, maybe that has some merit. Why was he picked out? Why was he targeted? Why did it? You know,
Yeah, we can argue that one.
There's different theories.
You can
about
argue
it,
racial divide.
He ain't on the patent on that move.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wasn't the only person doing it.
Somebody put him D.
Huh? He didn't.
Somebody put him D.
Yeah.
Somebody
Well,
put him D.
and I mean, and you can also argue that okay, he's been convicted. Are they gonna go after Weinstein? And it was a couple of other people named. I think I had pulled it up in my phone.
It's a lot
yeah,
of them.
are they going to now publicly prosecute these people?
It's up to the defendants.
Because I think Weinstein, if I'm not mistaken, I think he molested both those Corey boys, Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. And then wasn't he also? Didn't Terry Crews say that he propositioned him?
He didn't. I don't remember him saying Weinstein, but the Haim boys, Corey Haim. I think it was who's Emilio Estevez's brother?
Charlie?
Sheen. I think it was Charlie Sheen.
You think it was the dad?
No, Charlie. I think he said it was Charlie.
Was it Charlie?
I don't think it was Weinstein. It was like one of those guys.
No, it was. And let me tell you why I don't think so. Because he would have only been a few years older. I think it was somebody bigger than that. And
Nathaniel
the reason,
Brooks.
huh?
Nathaniel Brooks.
Man, you're slow tonight because you got a delayed reaction, you know. Because I watched the movie a couple of weeks ago, and Corey Haim,
I'm looking up.
when he first came out, he was asked by a big time producer, "Do you want to be with the do you want to be part of the Good Old Boys?" You know, it's sort of like the Brat Pack in a sense. Well, this is what's required. So they went into the trailer, and while they didn't show everything, they kind of showed clips of him. He pretty much he wanted to make it to the top, so he slept with this big time director. And I think that's what was happening to not just women, but some of these boys too.
Yeah, he did. It was against Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, see,
wait,
that's
wait,
when.
wait, on the heels, Corey Feldman. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this has been going on for a long time. You know, when you start thinking about that entertainment industry, both men and women were being sexually assaulted. You know, but I specifically remember Corey Haim and Corey Feldman because they had a hard time getting themselves together. And yeah, so Eric said Weinstein allegedly molested Corey Feldman.
Michael Jackson was in there too. Because you said that him and Macaulay Culkin.
I don't think that's ever been proven.
He said John Grissom, 80s actor.
Yeah, I agree. Sherelle says, I think all of them should be brought up on charges if they are guilty. Bill should not be the only one. And I completely agree. You know, okay. Wow. It's so, I think when you think of that.
Corey Haim and Charlie Sheen,
yeah. But those boys paid the heavy price because, you know, they turned to drugs and alcohol, trying to cope. Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, but did he really give him the Quaalude, or did he just grind it down and
put it in his baby food,
sprinkle it on?
Well, I think
them Jello pudding.
That,
them Jello pudding pops.
Yeah, well, in Corey Haim's case, he was given coke.
Them Jello pudding pops, you know,
at a young age. Them boys was getting
them
high
Jello
at
pudding
such
pops
a young
was
age.
Either way, it's wrong. It's predatory.
It's wrong. Exactly. It's like you're using your position to, you know, sexually assault. It's crazy. And like Eric said, don't forget Woody molested his stepdaughter. Yeah. It
Wow.
was the
R.
norm.
R. Kelly.
Yeah, and I
Huh.
think some magazine is launching a protest to prevent people from buying his records now.
Yeah, man, he did something else
He
too.
did something else, yeah,
Recently, yeah,
recently.
I've seen some.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think they keep doing it because, yeah, they get a little bit of bad press and then it goes away. You know, they pay and it goes away. And I think their mindset is probably like, well, I can keep doing this. I got the money to pay. But one of these times, your number will be up. And you should get jail time if you're found guilty.
But it was said that Michael Jackson was doing something before he died. They had Michael Jackson out there doing something. Matter of fact, it was in a joke. It was in a joke, and the joke was, uh, knock knock. No, I think it was yeah, knock knock. Who's there? Little boy blue. Little boy.
I think I remember something about that. But here's
Little
what I'm
boy
going to
blue
say
who?
on the Michael Jackson thing.
Michael.
I think I don't think it's ever been proven that he actually molested somebody. I think that he paid to keep it quiet
Snap.
so that the you know
yeah. That's a topic in itself because they had parents um, dropping their kids off at
and
Michael
that's the
Jackson,
point I was getting ready to
and,
make.
and for him to watch them while I'm like, please, I wouldn't let Michael Jackson watch my kids on TV.
But if you believe that this man was molesting
Watch.
children, were you looking for a paycheck? Is that why you took your children there to stay with him? So hoping that if he was a molester, that he would molest your child, and that was your come up? You were going to put your child out there, use your child to be a victim if you believed he was a molester? Because if I believe that, I'm not going to take my child there.
Yeah, but that's our conventional wisdom kicking in. Who knows the reason why? Maybe they just completely trusted him.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, well, like I said, I don't think they've ever proven that he's, was guilty of that.
Yeah, but my point is, if like I said, it's like I said, I think it was part of the culture,
Yeah.
and he wasn't the only person doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But if he did do it, shame on him. He gets what
Exactly, and that's the point.
But what should happen to him? Because how old is he now?
whatever they decide in the court. I mean, whatever the judges are. I mean, that's above my.
Because if he goes to jail,
And
it's
do you
going to
think
be
because he's
like
80
a Martha
that
Stewart
he
size
shouldn't
jail.
go to jail? Do you think that because he's 80 he shouldn't go to jail?
Please, what if they want to get this out of the way so the civil court cases can begin? So
Exactly. Exactly.
So let's see how long it takes for that to happen.
Exactly.
But forget about jail. They want to ruin him financially, which they did.
Which they did.
He was
yeah.
on the verge of purchasing NBC.
Right. Him and Oprah and a couple of other people.
He was
Yeah.
on the verge of purchasing there, and
Yeah.
next thing you know, the mighty has fallen. That's what we like to do in the media. I don't want to.
But
we like to build people up to just tear them down.
Yeah. And, it's funny because I just had this conversation yesterday, I think. When we build something, and I'm going to take it back to the Black Wall Street, and I'm going to take it back to Rosewood too. When we build something, white America becomes threatened because we are standing together. Now, if you look at the history of Rosewood and then Tulsa, all of that stemmed from a black man being accused of raping a white woman in both cases. And so they burned down our communities. Now, I think in Tulsa, I think it might have been true, but the black people were standing their ground because they wanted to make sure that this man got a fair trial because they were threatening to lynch him without a trial. Right. In Rosewood case, it was a false accusation, and they still burnt that community down. And the point that I'm making, it's like whenever we do something on a big scale, it's like they're so threatened, and all it takes is for that one person, a white woman, their pride and joy, to say, oh, um, he raped me, and whether it's true or not, they come with their guns blazing,
Yeah.
be it a public assassination or whatever the case may be.
I got two things to say in response to that. Number one, um, how many times that happened to black women?
Exactly.
Number two, um, there was no repercussion for these false accusations.
No.
Even Emmett Till's accuser.
Right. He was supposed to have whistled.
She changed the course of history, and then she admitted that it was a lie.
But his life was already taken.
And she changed the course of history.
Yeah.
So that's what It's like I don't want to say it was a different time. Like I said, some things that was accepted back then. It's different now.
Mm-hmm.
And either way, if you got that much power, and they like with Bill Cosby, they taking away all his doctorates and all that
right,
stuff, but they're not giving back none of the money
right
that he contributed.
Mm-hmm.
To these universities,
and
millions
that's
of dollars.
right, exactly.
They're not giving it back to him to say, okay, you know what, you probably need the money now to support your court case. No, they're keeping the money, but they're taking back the docket, taking back the exonerary degrees.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. I agree.
Ridiculous and unfair.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people, if you graduate, you get a degree. No matter what, you got a degree.
That's what I believe.
I've never seen.
And so, what does that have to do with the sexual assault of these women? Because he still earned those degrees
through his philanthropy and stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. So it kind of cheapens the award.
Yeah, it does. I just feel like we have to work so much harder. And as you mentioned, it was part of the culture back then, but it still wasn't right. But I think it showed how less they thought of women. But to take it a step further, a black woman in that same situation, they wouldn't have probably convicted him if it was a black woman.
Yeah, you can argue that, but I mean, just take race out of it. I mean,
well, it's kind of hard to do that when they're publicly. He did it,
man, Whether you take advantage of anybody, male on male, female, white, black, it's wrong because you cannot. It's and I say his situation more severe than Harvey Weinstein, because even though he preyed on people, but it was some degree of consensuality. With this, it's like you don't know, and that's horrific.
Well, let me say this, because it's kind of hard to.
Let's say somebody give me a drink and I wake up and I don't know what the heck you do.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, I don't think those women asked for it. I think that.
Last night one.
Like, did you say
when okay, let's take Charlie Sheen. Let's put him on the table.
Okay.
He was infected with HIV for a couple years and was still out there sleeping with women, having unprotected sex, knowingly.
Magic?
No.
Charlie
Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, talk about that.
And that's what I'm getting ready to say. Are they talking about that? Have they prosecuted him? Exactly. So, and that's what I'm saying. It's kind of hard to not put race in it, because I think that we're held by a different standard. Now, I think when you drug somebody and you intentionally, look to have your way with them, yeah, you should be convicted if found guilty, because that is traumatic. I can't even, because I've never been in that situation, I can't even begin to imagine how those women felt. You understand? And this is probably somebody they looked up to, and for that to happen, it's not an easy thing to come out against somebody of that magnitude.
They probably feel like Charlie Sheen has already gone through enough. Ain't no need of dragging that man through.
But it takes an accuser to come out and make a big deal out of it. Whether or not these people had support, and whether or not Bill Cosby was targeted, That like I said, that's another
That's
conversation.
yeah, you're
Whatever the
right.
motives are
Mm-hmm.
for them to come out after all these years, yeah, we can argue that they had some encouragement,
Right,
you know.
right.
But if you didn't do the crime, you wouldn't be out there to get to be tried.
But see, technically, let's just be honest. Let's be honest, because the last thing that I heard is that if you do have HIV and have sex with someone and ain't telling them,
It's manslaughter.
that is
Yeah, it is manslaughter.
that's yeah, that manslaughter. I thought it was
And see, he was being
yeah.
blackmailed.
So that you killing you. That's like literally almost like you taking somebody's life. Last thing I heard that was against the law. That you got time for that shit. So for him to know that he got it and then turn around and then still go out there and sleep with these women, so that means you should be tried for every woman that you did that shit to.
And do you hear anything about it now? See, he had to come out because he was being blackmailed, and I think the National Enquirer was getting ready to expose it. So he had to come out and say what his status was. But he knew for a few years and was paying, someone to keep it quiet. And so all that time, if you think of the women he slept with during that time, knowing that he was HIV positive.
And that man still worked, and he still got endorsements.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
I thought he lost
And
some of that.
that's not
Because
fair.
you haven't seen him.
He has a show on
He had a Super Bowl commercial.
TNT or something like
What,
that. Eric
Charlie Sheen?
Yes.
The Fiat commercial. Remember
Yeah.
He was under house arrest, and he was driving the car around.
Yeah.
house.
How long ago that?
He has a series on TNT. I forgot what
Three
it's
and a Half
called.
Men?
No, it's not that. It's he's playing a shrink or something. I forgot what it's called, but he's still working. He's still, reaping the benefits of his stardom
Well, or he's reaping the benefits of his father.
and his own stardom.
Yeah, I mean,
You have to realize
still
he
gotta
was
be-
the highest paid actor on television. He's reaping the benefits of his stardom.
Yeah, I mean, he needs. I mean, I ain't gonna take the man ability to be gainfully employed. That's
Right, yeah. But
and
shouldn't he
that's
be held accountable?
But if it's you get held accountable to the extent of the law, whatever the law is. But you have to have somebody to come out. Like I said, the law is the law.
Right.
But like, okay, with Bill Cosby, are you gonna keep him from being gainfully employed? Or
Now they're gonna
like
try to keep him from
Right.
being.
So
Yeah.
that's where you should draw it.
But they can't.
Well,
Because the
they
Cosby
can,
Show is still on.
but they remember when these allegations surfaced, they took that off.
You can't see it. You can't. It ain't on syndication no more.
Yeah, yes, it is.
It's
on
back
TV1.
on. Yeah, it's back on TV1, but they took it off. It was
TV1,
yeah. They took it off of all of the networks that were
It's
running
still
it.
rolling.
They just started putting it back on. But yeah, they took his show off for quite some time. So, and that's what I'm saying. It's a different standard that we are held to. I think that wrong is wrong, but it doesn't always work out when it comes to us. Eric said in the case of Charlie Sheen, that sick fucker should be hung. But I mean, nothing will be done like like you said, unless somebody comes out. But I think in his case, he's paying people off.
Yeah, I tell you, and I believe to a certain degree that there probably was a lot of females that Bill Cosby paid off.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there was probably some that got probably paid off and wanted more.
Yeah.
Or felt like that that they would get more money if they would tell their story. Because you get paid to tell your story, right?
Well, and I think for some, if you suffered trauma, it may be you may think there's no amount of money that you can put on that.
Yeah, these women, for some reason, they strike me as legit victims.
Yeah.
Because these aren't stars. These are like secretaries worked at Temple.
Right,
These kind of
right.
people, which had no, I don't think they had anything to gain. I guess they will have something to gain if they sue him, take him to civil court, which I'm waiting to see.
And you think about the victims, and sometimes people don't come forward if they're the only ones because they don't want to be raked through the coals. They've already been victimized once by this man, and now public opinion, or she asked for it, what was she doing in his room, yada yada yada. So it could be very intimidating to come forward to go after somebody of that magnitude.
Look at Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's a situation where I really believe that he didn't do it. I think that was a situation where.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Even like 10 years later, or after he did his time, they asked him and said, "What do you think about that woman?" He was like, he was so mad, still upset. He said,
Of course.
He said, "I wish I really would have raped that bitch." You see what I'm saying? If he was like, I wish I really would have, for her to do that.
Yeah, like I never believed that.
Right.
We're not talking about
Desiree.
Oh, okay. So we're not talking about the other one.
Which one? The one that he got
Robin.
Robin.
No.
Okay.
She never said he sexually assaulted her.
He definitely said he hit her.
Yeah. He said that. Yeah. But I think
he was Mike Tyson's a funny guy. I remember he was talking about when Robin Givens started. They broke up, but they were still kind of seeing each other. And he's a different person now, but
he is.
He was on one of the late shows, and he said he was waiting outside for her to get home, waiting outside her house, and she pulled up in a car, right? And he was Brad Pitt.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
He was like, first he was mad, wanted to run up to the car, and he was like, but damn, that's Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Said,
and Brad Pitt talked about that. Yeah.
He was like, damn, that's Brad Pitt. What the fuck I'm going to compare to Brad
Exactly. He told his own story on stage, and it was actually pretty good.
Yeah. When your mess becomes your message, that's how you.
Yeah, it was really good, and you can see how much he had grown.
Yeah.
I mean, significantly. It was like I was so proud of him.
Yeah.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, you really gotta own your own shit.
Yeah. I mean,
so let's say, what's up, Brian? Let's say if Bill comes out and say, you know what, I apologize for all of the wrong that I've done to these women. It wasn't no excuse, and I believe that I need to seek counseling. Is that enough for y'all?
I mean, it's already enough for me. I don't.
Yeah, we're not
like
his victims.
Right. I don't. I would still support him if there's a need.
Right.
I would
Yeah.
still buy it. You know what I'm saying? I would still watch his movie. Huh? Is it enough for you? I think whatever due process he whether it's 10 years, 30 years, or whatever the law says.
I mean, because the bottom line is we are not his victims. And I think it's kind of in the hands of his victims. Would an apology be enough for them? Especially the trauma that they... Because the thing is with sexual assault, and if you're not able to talk about it, it affects every relationship that you enter into. So you don't know what those women lost over time, emotionally.
Yeah, that's true, because I've been in relationships where women were assaulted.
Yeah.
Prior to me dealing with them, and you're right. It's a situation. Sometimes you can't. There's certain ways you can't touch them because it reminds them of that incident.
Right.
And it's that's why I feel strongly about that, because you never know. Even though they move on, they compartmentalize it. It still is a part of their life, and it's still part of their memories.
Yeah.
So just imagine that, you're in a situation and, you touching them a certain way.
It's a flashback.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it ever leaves. I think that you can heal, but I don't think it ever leaves. So I think that in itself, I feel like they've suffered, a lot.
That's why I say whatever, whatever happens, whatever he gets, he gets.
Exactly.
Okay, but whatever debt he needs to pay, he needs to pay.
Let them pay it
And
and
then
move on.
and hopefully if that's enough for them, and if it's hopefully it's okay. But
Hmm.
other than that, is whether I support him or not, I think he
He's still
still
gonna
should
be
be.
supported. I
Yeah,
mean,
I still
Yeah.
think he should.
we
He should
talking
be
about we talking
gainfully
about our
employed.
not in my I'll say my childhood.
Yeah, yeah.
He was
Well, we don't
our
turn.
I
Yeah,
feel the
childhood
same. I
exactly.
feel
father.
the same
And
way
that's the
about Harvey
thing.
Weinstein. Let him go through what he need to do. Let him make reparations or make amends or whatever, and heal. You know what I'm
And
saying?
heal, right?
Because again, that was a part of whether it's a sickness or not, or what you're a part of a predatory culture
Hmm.
of Hollywood that you were not. It was widespread, and that's why women couldn't come out
And
because whoever they went
exactly.
to, it was no outlet.
And that's the point that I was making to you. It's like it's my word against this man and power at a time when women didn't have a voice.
Yeah.
Who
Same.
was they going to come out to?
And you can liken that to the civil rights movement, where
Yeah,
you go the whole judge and jury and everything, and the court system is against you, and you
hmm,
can't even stand up for your own rights. It's the
right.
same,
It is. It's the
it's
same
almost like the
thing.
same
Yeah,
thing.
it's the same thing. You know,
Disenfranchisement.
right? Exactly. Um, One thing that I read in an article, as I'm looking at Eric's comment, he feels sorry for Camille, but in some of these cases, the women were coming to his house. And it's my understanding, I think there might be one or two civil suits against Camille because a couple of the accusers say she was in the home at the time the assault took place.
But not only that,
That'll be
remember
hard.
15 years ago, he had a illegitimate daughter.
Right,
You know what I
exactly. And
mean?
that was all
And
in the media.
she
Yeah.
supported him
Hmm.
through that as well. Yeah.
And when you are married to someone, you know them, especially when you've been together for a long time. I'm not going to say that she wasn't aware of his behavior. But again, she's the mother of his children. Um he's the man making the money. Who's going to listen to her? So you can argue she's just as much the victim. So I think so many lives were, affected by this. Um, she knew her husband ran around. She might not have known to what degree, and maybe she did. I mean, you've been with somebody all this time, you know what some of their behaviors are. But what could she say?
I mean, whatever she does, whether she sticks with him or goes or moves on, divorces,
Mm-hmm.
it's still her choice.
It's her choice,
and you
absolutely.
respect that,
Mm-hmm.
because we could always say, well, I would do, but you don't
But you
know
don't know if
till you
you're
go
not
through
in
it.
them shoes.
And either way, if you decide to stay and stick with your marriage through something like that, or stick with your man, I respect that too.
Of course, because
And
it's
I'm
your
not gonna
right to
be judging.
choose. Yeah, absolutely.
For whatever reason, she did it,
Mm-hmm.
and she's doing it. So, and she's doing it with class and grace.
Exactly,
In my opinion.
exactly. So, yeah. Um, it's a difficult situation. For everybody involved when you think about it. I think when I think about this, even though okay, that's her husband, she's on trial whether she shows up in court or not because people are looking at her. She's under the same scrutiny as he is,
I
as
don't,
his wife.
I don't think so. I think
Right.
that's his.
Here's why
that's his
I say
wagon.
that.
That's his wagon. If I was her, I'd be like, look, that's your wagon. You need to tow. I'm here, but that's on you.
Right, but
And the
still
wife
they're
was the one
publicly.
who did the quaalude.
Here's my point. Her husband is being prosecuted for sexual assault of many women. Um, it has to have some type of effect on you and your children.
Yeah, but that's a responsibility. She probably her focus is probably holding her family together.
Right, yeah.
And maybe she's trying to protect this whatever legacy he has.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's not like he consulted her when he said, you know what, I think I'm gonna roofie this girl.
What
You
you
know what I'm
what you
saying?
think about that, Camille?
Yeah, yeah. You know, ain't like he did this on his own. That's his wagon. He
I
needs to
get
talk.
that, but I think that when people set out to do harm, I think they don't think about the impact, the psychological impact that it
He
has
wasn't. No.
on, yeah. So because all he thought about was himself.
Yeah, in that game he was playing.
Exactly. He wanted the chase, you know. Hindsight now, I'm sure he thinks about a lot of that
And he
because
might,
he's older.
yeah, and he probably has multiple regrets. That's why he came with truth and told the truth.
Yeah.
For peace on himself.
Yeah, and that's which is a great point because I think when we do things, people say he should be punished for this and that. Um, I think sometimes you don't realize the effect of what you do. People live in their own mind for the shit that they've done.
Mm-hmm.
We don't live with him, so we don't really know how the man beats himself up for a bad judgment, for many bad judgments. Um, all we can hope for is that he gets, he seeks help, and that the same with the women involved, that they get some type of help, and that hopefully, all parties involved can heal.
And it's going to move on. I mean,
Yeah.
just look how long the O.J. Simpson thing went down. You know what I'm saying? Even after he was tried and convicted, and then free to go. Then that little incident where he broke in and got his own stuff
It
back
was
or something.
simple.
You know what I'm saying? Now he's free.
Yeah, they found something else to convict him of. Yeah.
So but now he's out. He's free. You know what I'm saying? So you don't hear too much talk about that no more. You know what I'm saying? So this all blow over. Everybody gonna get situated and all that, and then it'll blow over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they got that man's face spread it all on Facebook. Along with others.
As soon as Beyonce go on tour, they're gonna be talking about something.
You know, huh?
As soon as Beyonce go on tour, they're gonna.
Yeah. That's all. That's all.
That
That's
becomes old news.
That's all. That's all. Or
What
You
we
think
talk-
we
what
become
were
a
we talking about 2
society
weeks ago?
where
if Trump
we are
shakes
numb
somebody's hand too
to
long.
trauma?
Hmm?
Do you think we've become a society where we are numb to trauma?
No,
It's like, let's move on to the next.
no. I think we become a society of sniffing dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Where you ever see a sniffing dog, you sniff something, then you smell something over here, then you go here and you go there. That's what
So
are.
we're easily distracted.
It's here and now, then move over there, move
Yeah.
over there, move over there,
Yeah,
and that's how. What were we talking about 2 weeks ago?
right.
We don't even know. But it was something
Mm-hmm.
that drove our topic. Trump. It was Donald Trump.
Trump, yeah.
You know what I mean? Stormy
Uh-huh.
Daniels.
And Stormy, yeah.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
Where is that? Did that
Now,
resolve
would you,
itself?
in this
No.
case, she consented, so you can't say she was sexually assaulted. She got played.
She got played.
Yeah. So,
That's what I'm saying. So it's a difference. So people want to use those parallels of Bill Cosby, and I said,
but
I
you
don't.
cannot.
I can't
Not
see
for that.
because
Yeah.
these are people that we had a quid pro quo kind of thing, and we're like, okay, but yeah, I reneged on the deal. You slept with me because you thought you were gonna get something out of it,
Exactly.
but you didn't.
Exactly.
These is like you sitting up there talking, and next thing you know, you wake up in the morning,
And you naked.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's horrific.
That is
Because
horrific.
look how many things you're at somebody's mercy, and look how many things you could really do
Right.
with somebody or to
Exactly.
someone, which is not cool in any certain.
Right.
So at the worst case scenario, you're looking at, Harvey Weinstein is a predator, Trump, predator, blah blah blah. But again, that was happening too, and I'm actually glad that women are coming out.
Yeah, I am too.
I'm actually glad, but some I don't want it to be watered down because, again, some. I hope all these allegations are earnest,
Yeah.
and they don't they're not lying, because what's going to happen is going to mess it up for people that really need to come
And,
out.
and, and that's a concern because I do think that sometimes you have a lot of bandwagon riders, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because, some folk want their 15 minutes, you know, but for the real victim, like you said, I hope that for the women that just want to ride the bandwagon, I hope it doesn't overshadow the real victims coming out, and sharing their story. I think a lot of times in a case like this, all it takes for one person to come out to give others, that suffered at the hands of that person, courage
Mm-hmm.
to come forward, because you just don't want to be
Yeah.
in it alone.
And you know what? You had you I say victim. You had people on the show here that were victims of
Yeah,
sexual assault,
yeah,
and especially with women, I always find it. My hat goes off to them
yeah,
to come out of those situations where they're completely powerless, and they still can function even though
mm-hmm.
they got baggage, and
Mm-hmm.
they're still dealing with it. I commend them. You
Yeah,
know, when I was listening to their stories, it was it kind of moved me because, just to hear some of their to hear what they went through,
mm-hmm.
that nightmare situation, but they're still standing.
They're still standing. And I think sometimes you develop a mind frame where I'm not going to let this situation own me,
Hmm.
you
You
know.
need to.
Yeah, because if not, you're always going to be a victim to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it hard. And I think that when the person that's committing the assault, they don't think about that this affects these people for the rest of their lives. When I had Robert on here, um, that was one of the things I was so glad. I wanted him to share his story because men and women get sexually assaulted. Um, he was sexually assaulted as a kid a couple of times because, it was obvious he was going to be gay. And that male macho attitude, um, I'm going to make him tough. I'm going to do this. He got beat up a lot, not just by family members, but, kids outside because they referred to him as a punk or sissy. Um, he was, molested a few times. And so he struggled not just with his sexuality, but getting beaten down like that, because of who you are. It's like you can't imagine watching somebody go through that. And so in his case, he turned to drugs to cope. So everybody suffers different. Everybody handles things differently. Um, women. I think when I think of women, I always feel like women can be so strong, and because we've had to deal with a lot. But imagine if you were a man and being sexually assaulted.
Matter of fact, they had. Have you been watching the show Uncensored?
I missed a couple of
TV
episodes.
One.
Yeah.
You get a chance, pull the one up with Charlemagne.
Okay. I think I record them, but I haven't watched them all yet.
Charlemagne said that when he was young, he was molested, and he said he's watching the TV and he's watching Tyler Perry speak out about his
Yeah.
situation. So he says, I'm sitting there looking at TV. I see Tyler Perry on national TV crying about his situation, and I'm sitting there wondering, like, why is he crying when I enjoyed it? When he said that, I'm like, what? Whoa, whoa! Like you gotta,
I'm gonna have to watch
you gotta
that.
watch that, and
Oh.
that, because Uncensored, they bring rappers, singers or
Mm-hmm.
whoever to tell the
Yeah. Yeah.
the undying truth.
The only one I saw was Tiffany Haddish, so I got a lot of them
Yeah.
recorded, but I haven't watched them. Um, I remember when Donnie McClurkin shared his story. a few years ago about being molested and the impact that it had on his life. I mean, people, you just don't know like the struggles they've had, but when you make a decision that I'm not going to let this rule my life, and you begin, oh dang, I forgot, and you start healing, you know, I think you can then help other people to heal, because I think that's what it's all about. You know, you went through this experience. How can you use that to empower somebody else that went through a similar experience?
You make your message.
Exactly.
That's what
exactly.
You need to do. Because it'll be all in vain if you don't do it.
Right.
It'll be all for naught. So, like I said, when people see, because it's situations I can't relate to, but when I see someone come out of that, rise from the fire, from such, horrific experiences like that, it's I have the utmost
You
respect
applaud
for
them, yeah. Because you see, that they are no longer victims of their circumstances.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, at the very least, they're showing strength and they
right.
moving through it, because you still, when behind closed doors, you don't know how people
True.
react, and you don't know how, you know, especially when you're dealing with traumatic experiences, is when the light, when everybody's gone, and you deal with it.
Yeah.
I have family members who dealt with trauma, and they have good days and they have bad days, and you never know how it's going to hit you.
That's true.
And as a friend or being supportive, you wish you could take the pain away, but you can't.
But you
Because you
can't.
can't unless you went through it. You don't know.
One trauma I went through, it was the visualization of Dr. Love performing oral sex on a pillow. That was traumatic for me.
Yeah,
You know.
It's,
You can relate.
Yeah, that was tough. That was tough. I think that pillow joined the Me Too movement. That's okay. She gonna love me in the morning.
Okay.
Notice how they.
I had to lighten up
Notice how they're laughing to their
quiet
self.
stuff. You're like, yeah.
Notice how they're laughing on account of me. I don't care. I don't care. I mean, hey,
say,
hey,
yeah,
yeah.
Oh my God, I cannot believe you sometimes.
I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. So, hey, say what you want. Don't fucking judge me.
Oh my God, that damn Richard. By the way, guys, we're the third Monday in June. We will be back at our home at Corinthians Restaurant and Lounge. The patio crew is waiting for us. That's on Monday, yeah.
Okay.
Every Monday.
So, third Monday.
Every third Monday.
Yeah.
And they are already waiting.
They're waiting. Every time I go around there, they're asking, when are you coming back? Since May is kind of, we still don't have warm weather yet, I just figured we'll wait till June. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. And so are they. And what else coming up? So I'm actually, I will be
to Atlanta
in June.
Okay.
But it'll be the week after. And so the name of the show is actually called Breaking Code.
Okay.
So
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, I can't wait.
You guys been filming for a while, huh?
Yeah, and I gotta add y'all to the group because we kind of post all kind of topics and stuff. So we're gonna start to do, I think, a video cast. I think next week actually. So I'm excited about it. I got a couple of things on the horizon, so kind of excited about that. I'm gonna put all my shit out in the open, but
why not?
I mean,
You blowing up.
I'm getting jiggy with it. But
broadcasting in the UK and all that stuff.
and that's what I'm saying. Oh my God, I still be getting music from different groups from all over the place. That's why I want to make sure everything gets set up because um, I want to give people opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, to me, that's more important than me blowing up. You know, I want to provide opportunity.
Yeah.
So, I have. I gotta give props because I know we're running out of time. What time is it anyway?
Uh,
2 minutes
minutes now.
Okay. I have to say this. These two, they are my ride or dies.
Who's two?
Uh, this one and that one.
That one.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what what's his
and
name? McCain. That's what he referred to Obama as one time. I think during the debate, he said this one.
that one.
That one, yeah. So, but I just I really appreciate everything that you guys do. You put up with my bullshit. Um, but
Did I say that out loud?
yeah, your outer voice. That was your inner, but it came out. So I just want to say thank you because I really appreciate everything that y'all do. And I know sometimes I can probably be just a teeny weeny bit difficult, but it all comes from a good place. I think I always get on YouTube because I want you all to promote yourselves and just put yourself out there. Even with you, I tell you all the time that you need to be singing more. And look here over to the left, Mr. Sensational.
Damn,
You need to be more available. We need your presence.
I'm omnipotent. I'm everywhere.
Whatever. He was supposed to be back in here at 8. Let me just let y'all know that. What time is it again?
It's 9 o'clock.
Right,
It's
exactly.
8 o'clock somewhere.
Exactly. I'm on a different time zone.
Not at Street Legal. It's not.
It's probably 8 o'clock out there. You probably was like, you know what, 7:59, Mr. Battery, you come out.
So, on that note, next week we're going to have a special guest. He's coming down from New York, so it should be an interesting show. I'll put the flyer out tomorrow. And any announcements you all have? You announce your...
Look, yeah, I'm the season's starting to kick in. It's every weekend, pretty much. Yesterday I did a show with William at one of the churches down in the city,
Okay.
which was really, really nice. The congregation is really, really small.
Okay.
But we did a steel drum gospel kind of
Oh,
thing.
wow.
Yeah, and then like I said, the band and the jazz group got me juggling. So.
I miss having the full group, so I gotta find a venue so that we can go back to doing that. Because I was looking at our pictures a couple of days ago.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Yes. So I'm gonna work that out. I'm gonna work that out.
We could bring Nate up.
He can sing.
Spit some bars.
So.
For real.
And
I just want to make sure that wasn't a
that
sidebar.
like, no, we want you out there singing more, man.
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I'm working on it. It's a couple of hills that I'm climbing over right now.
And I just want to send a special prayer out to your mom, and hope that everything works out.
No doubt.
I appreciate that.
So, all right, folks. Good night, YouTubers, Facebookers. We will see you next week, same time, same place.
That's
These
sign language
two.
for see you later.
All right.
Sign language.
Rock it out. Now you want to be visible?
That's right.
Oh, Lord. Great show. Great show.
Yeah, I know we talked. I forgot all about.
It was good. That's why.
So who's coming down next week?
Star Kim. OG Star Kim.
Is it Rakim?
No. Oh, you did it. What? Let's see.
By the time summer gets here, it's gonna be winter.
Okay.